Hey, Matthew. How's it going?
Oh, I'm on talking to mute. I realized my window is behind another window. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Happy to be able to attend the PeerDAS breakout calls finally.
Only the best breakout calls for the best people,
Uh,
obviously.
yeah, I feel like I'm so behind. I haven't really been keeping up with this stuff for a while.
To be fair, I mean, you have your fingers in an awful lot of pots, so like I'm not too worried about you.
Yeah, dealing with MevBoost stuff at the moment. So fun.
It's my favorite. Did you ever read my ordering thing?
I'm so sorry, I did not know the thing you brought up in Thailand.
So
Uh,
I put it up in E3 search. I put up a post about it. Let me get
okay.
you a link.
Did George or anyone else respond? At least.
No, because I kind of put it up right about like when everybody was doing DEF CON. So like I think it kind of just got buried.
Okay.
Let's see where how's the rest of your New Year's?
It was good. Can't
Good.
believe the current year is already like 10% over.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Like the older I get, the faster they go is the part that like is a little scary because they already go fast.
Yep.
Hooray! And we are synced. Lodestar is part of the DevNet now. How
Awesome.
cool.
Congrats.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Dude, thank you so much for you know, I just everything you do is wonderful. Thank you.
Of course. Glad it worked. Jim. Okay. Should we start off? Are we else? Yeah, I know I don't think we noticed that we're overlapping with Fossil every second week, so we might have to see what we do about that.
Fossil for the win. We cannot steal that thunder.
Fair enough. Um, does anyone know if the recording is already on this call? I don't think I'm the host.
I was the first one in and it did say it was recording when I
It,
came
Okay,
in.
it
perfect.
says it's recording on the top
Yeah,
right for me.
perfect.
About the time, I don't know, maybe what if we keep it at this time on every other week and the week that it overlaps, we go back to the previous time? Is that too confusing? I mean, also just I was thinking this because maybe that allows at least one every 2 weeks the Australia people to join more easily.
I think that makes sense. We've had that issue in the past where we had different times for different calls. I think people just usually don't like it if there's one person leading the call all the time, but I think now there's Jimmy as well as me slash Barnabas and a few more people who are willing to lead the call, so it should be fine. Yeah,
I
could
agree.
you
Or we can
drop
do,
a message?
if you are working on
Sorry.
PeerDAS, you are not allowed to work on Fossil. You have to focus on this.
I'm sorry, I veto that.
Oh, and also, Jimmy cannot attend this hour anymore, so I'll be covering for him.
Yeah, exactly. So if we were to follow Francesco's suggestion, then Jimmy would still be able to attend every alternate call. Cool. Francesco, could you post a message about that? And if people are okay with it, we can go with that suggestion. Thanks. Okay, so PeerDAS. So first step, I'll just give you guys an overview of what's going on with the DevNet. So since the last call, we actually do have a DevNet up and running, roughly 90-ish%, and we're almost 1,000 epochs in. So this is looking significantly better than what we had in the last couple of DevNets. I think around the 3 to 5 day range is when stuff started breaking down. So we seem to have cleared that hurdle. So congratulations. Grandine is aware that they have an issue. I think the person who's normally working on Grandine's PeerDAS code base is on out of office right now, so they might not fix their node in time. But Matthew, do you want to give an update about Lodestar, and then I have a follow-up question for you?
Sure. Should I leave out that somebody forgot us on the DevNet config? Oh my God.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Sorry. I went by the spec sheet, and the spec sheet didn't have Lodestar on it, so I didn't set up a Lodestar validator. Sorry about that.
No, honestly, totally sweet. So we did get everything going, got it debugged. We're spinning up a couple nodes on our clusters, and they're syncing now. So I'm about to pull it up on the dashboard, and you can go ahead and deploy that PeerDAS branch. It seems like it's working fine now. But it's with the Geth PeerDAS YAL.
That's perfect. And if you want, until Grandine has a fix, I could point the validators at you guys.
Sweet.
Okay, cool. I'll take care of that later and reach out to you, confirming the image and so on. And Matthew also brought up a good point. So Geth has merged in a couple of their changes that enable EOF. However, they haven't gone the entire way, like it doesn't do much, but it seems to be changing some structures. And as a result, we're going to have to lock an older version of Geth that's compatible for PeerDAS usage. So I've created an image, ethpanda ops/Geth :PeerDAS, I think. So up until we actually need active EL involvement, please use that image for all testing. So that implies all of the kurtosis configs, etc., would now need to specify this as the EL image that you're using. And just for sake of clarity, we're doing the exact same thing on the EOF side. We've pinned a version of Lighthouse that doesn't have the PeerDAS code base, but at the same time enables, it doesn't fail on Fudu. And that's what the EOF guys are using for testing their stack. Okay. Any clients want to give an update about how stuff is going with DevNet 4?
Lighthouse is holding well. We found a sync issue that's preventing us to sync it sometimes, where we add a peer to our sync before we get the metadata, so we don't consider it a supernode. But it has an easy fix and should be merged soon.
I can talk about Prism. So we are continuing to work on validator custody. It's a little bit more complex than expected, but we have some good progress. And also, yeah, you have a bug about Fulu bug, which is actually impacting Electra, because Fulu fork is the first one where the Fulu state and Fulu block is exactly the same than the Electra state and the Electra block. And because in Prism we do some duck typing, I mean, if something looks like Fulu, we consider it as Fulu. So sometimes we had some issues with Electra, and yeah, we are focusing on it.
Awesome. Thank you. We already heard from Lodestar. Is there any other client teams? I don't think.
Did from Nimbus.
Yeah, Nimbus.
Yeah, so we're working on parallel reconstruction. We're testing it in our local devnets. We do have some latency in validating gossip like since this network is an all supernode network, there are some faint forks that we see. It's usually happening when Nimbus is taking some time to make the block available for attestation. There is a time difference. We didn't have get blobs implemented yet. So basically, like a couple of days back, I implemented get blobs and I'm again testing it on local devnets. And this latency issue seems to have gone. But ideally, in a real network where, let's say we have even a 20, 30, 40% density of supernodes, I don't think this issue should come up. So that is pretty much from our side. We started some work on validator custody as well. It's still work in progress. Yeah. And I would say our sync algorithm is a bit optimistic. It relies preferably more on supernodes. We don't have rewriting the sync on a higher priority than other things, but we are still considering to like have a totally separate peer pool for peers who are subsets, like subset of our custody. So that is a bit of a long-term thing right now. But in terms of devnets, I think sync should work just fine. In which where we like kind of optimistically sync using supernodes first, if they are preferably there in more in number in the network. So yeah, that's update from my side.
Sounds good. Thanks for that. Yeah, I guess that brings us to the next 2 points. And also one of the comments, we do only have supernodes on the network right now. We only wanted to start with supernodes in the beginning because we've had quite a bit of trouble in the past with just having a network that's stable. So we wanted to first do it in easy mode. So I guess now 3-4 days it's been stable. We should be replacing all those, not all, but at least some of the supernodes into full nodes. I see Manu's put a proposal, so we do about 1/3 full nodes and 2/3, sorry, 1/3 supernodes and 2/3 full nodes. Is that acceptable for everyone? If so, then I can take care of that.
Should we do 80-20 so we're not that close to losing finality if the supernodes fail?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think the client distribution is symmetric anyway, so I can make sure that we have around 80% supernodes.
I
Okay,
think
that's
before having full nodes in, we should test withhold data columns so that we can like sort of forcefully enforce like all of the other nodes to reconstruct and leave it for like 2-3 days and then like drop the supernode density gradually. Although like yeah, I mean you can do both of the changes at the same time, but I think if you do withhold first, then you'll make sure that every client, every peer is actually reconstructing.
okay. Does every client already have a withhold data column flag with them that I can use?
I think only Lighthouse and Prism has just.
For Teku, we have reconstruction and sync only. We don't have reconstruction when we are on Gossip, but we should sync.
And yeah,
Okay, so
it's also my point before stopping some nodes and 1/3 of nodes and converting them from supernode to full node. We should, it's my first step in my message actually. We should, I guess, stop only one node per client to ensure that every client is able to sync up to the tip, because else we will lose the finality. Losing finality is something I would like to see after, but not now.
Yeah, that makes sense. One caveat, am I doing Genesis sync or am I doing checkpoint sync right now?
The node are stateful, right? I mean, if you restart a node on the devnet, it won't wipe the database.
Oh, no. Yeah, of course it won't. But I would delete the database of one node of every client. And then I would either need to choose if it's checkpoint sync or if it's Genesis sync.
I think point is more reasonable. That's what's going to happen on the network.
Okay. I can start with checkpoint sync and make sure that all the nodes can get ahead to begin with. And once that's good, switch to add the withhold data column flags. And then once that's looking good, add some full nodes and report back, I guess.
We actually
Does that
never
sound reasonable?
tried the checkpoint sync on Prism. Maybe it works, maybe not, but I'm sure that Genesis works either with an empty database or either with a database already close to the tip. It will work.
Yeah, Anish.
I think it's a good idea to try Genesis because you could at least like sync across 3 forks. I think that thing counts, and like there must be every client which should have, like, let's say, or request response domain for blobs and then columns. So that entire feature would be getting tested as well across the sync. So I think that thing is important because I think there might be people, like, I don't know, but there might be even us. Even we might just ask a post Fulu blocks, like a post Fulu blocks blobs by range. Who knows? Like, I'm not sure if we are absolutely correct there. So I think it's a good idea to do Genesis.
Yeah. Okay. I can maybe first try checkpoint sync to make sure that sync itself works and we have a fallback. And then I can use the same node again for Genesis sync and ping you guys on bugs. And once that's looking good, we can switch to full nodes. Okay, so I think that's most of it. The second one was Jimmy mentioned testing distributed blob building. So I guess this is part of the withholding data columns that you mentioned, right, Avnish?
No. Distributed blob buildings is, I think it includes engine get blobs v1, whoever has implemented that.
Yeah, Jimmy's message mentions Lighthouse is adding some test flags to artificially delay publishing blocks and columns. Dapline, do you have some more info on this?
Yeah, I guess I couldn't attend the previous one, but everyone in the room agrees that we should include the TCG proofs in the transaction. So my only concern with that's why I asked in the Discord group, is if we change the sell sign in the future, we would also have to change the way the KCG proofs are computed on the user end. Is that something that we are concerned about?
Do we know what kind of user really use blobs? I mean, is it mainly 99% of the time, is it L2s, or do we have some standard user using blobs? If it is majoritarily L2s, I guess we can rely on the fact that they will be able to do the needed work.
I think it's mostly L2s.
I think so.
Then, yeah, I think that was my only objection. to that, but I see Jimmy's point that otherwise it's gonna be a bottleneck if we scale quite high. Then I guess in terms of timeline, it's something that we want to see on the release of PeerDAS or something that we could do in the next fork.
Could you describe what the change would need to be? I don't think I fully grasped the change yet.
Yeah, so what we're talking here is now if you have to propose a block, you get just blobs and commitments from the EL. And it's the duty of the CL on the path of block production to compute the KCG proofs for every single block on every single cell. Now that's a lot of KCG proofs, so it takes a decent amount of time. I don't know the benchmarks, but maybe on the order of some hundreds of milliseconds. So instead, if the sender of the transaction sends the KCG proofs along with the transaction, then that time doesn't have to be spent. And the issue with this time is if you want to do any sort of block production locally, it's even worse. If we scale to a very high number of blobs, it's going to be pretty bad. So now we shift the burden of this computation to the sender of the transaction, and we don't have to spend the time. Is that summary correct?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention also that's correct. Just that it's not just local block production that's affected, but also distributed block building. Like if you send out just a block and you're kind of hoping that the network will do the rest for you, if you don't have the proofs already in the mempool, you either need to have people pre-compute everything, or you need them to compute it in the critical path. Like I get your block, and now I need to basically recreate the columns, which I mean is just sort of pulling the blobs from the mempool and putting them in column shape, but also getting the proofs. And so either you've like spent time to pre-compute it, or you just have to compute it at that moment. So that also kind of gets in the way of block building kind of in general. Like, like I guess both forms of local block building, like both actual local block building and distributed block building. So I mean, yeah, you could do pre-compute to make it better, but it seems like I mean, at least I understand there's other complexities and involving the EL, et cetera, but other than that, it definitely seems like the right way for this to happen would be for it to happen at the edge, at the transaction sender level. Then yeah, I mean, I don't have too much of an opinion on these other complexities, but I hope that like if we choose not to do it, it is because we're really sure that it's not going to be a blocker to increasing the block count.
Yeah, and I want to say from Lighthouse team, we are very eager to see this spec and happening as soon as possible. So we have a complete PeerDAS spec, hopefully this month, and we can get the ball rolling. So I think Jimmy is drafting a document now, and he wants to present to all core devs execution, because I think that's the first time that PeerDAS spills into their layer.
Yeah, so as far as I got as well, Jimmy did want to bring it up this week. He asked to add this as a discussion point. And the main open question was, like you said, who's going to work on the specification as well as who's going to work on EEL/East implementation if we actually need to have it. I think those were the two big points. I think Jimmy was ready to work on the presentation to EL devs, but like you said, this is the first time they're really engaging with PeerDAS in general. So having as many pieces of information for them such that they can get started ASAP would be great. Has anyone looked at EEL's implementation on this stuff? Okay, does anyone want to look at EEL's implementation?
Does EELs have mempool related things? I don't know.
I'm actually not even sure if that exists, to be honest.
Like I would look, but I don't know. What I've seen in EELs is more like just state transition, like that stuff. I haven't looked for the other stuff, but if it doesn't, yeah, I don't know. I can see if it exists or not, but
Okay, so I can also maybe ping Mario and ask him if Eels or East is even the right place for this, and if not, where would be the right place? I think the intent is mainly that once the ELs have implementations, that they could locally test it somewhere so that they know they're doing it right before we jump directly into interop. Okay, so I will ask Mario about that. And we've made a note for that. Jimmy would work on the specification / making the case at ACD. Is there anything else left for that topic? Is this still a contentious change, or is everyone agreed that this is something that should go into PeerDAS as soon as possible so we can finalize the spec?
I mean, Jimmy also brought up in Discord this question of more like longer term question of, do we want to change the cell size, and is that going to make it harder to do? I mean, my feeling is we might want to change the cell size. I don't know if, yeah, I don't have too much of an opinion on like how much harder this would make it. I don't think that it's something that we want to do like continuously, like that at every fork we want to make like these kind of parameter adjustments. So I wouldn't think that it's a good enough reason not to do it if we generally think it's a better design. Like I think maybe we might want to change the cell size once to reduce it, but other than that, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like something super. Yeah, that should happen more than that. I'm not sure if there's other contentious parts to it.
Does that sound like something we can then discuss on the PeerDAS testing chat and then figure out that? Are there any other major changes we should be talking about before we're talking about the next PeerDAS or the next month-ish of PeerDAS?
I'm not sure if this is related to now or to the next topic, but about validator custody, I think in your spec, Francesco, you wanted to set such that the public, you don't announce the updated CGC until you complete backfill. My issue with that is that I suspect that in the real network with the final values that we choose for rate fill, syncing would be really slow. So consider a node that has connected to it a lot of validators. When it starts, it doesn't have any information about these validators being there. So it will act as a regular node. Then 1 minute later, validators connect to it. So it triggers the backfill process to become a super node with via validator custody. This thing could take, I don't know, but maybe a week. So during a week, you would have a node that could act as a super node to the network, at least on the tip of the chain, but it doesn't because it's completing backfill. So the network loses one super node for 1 week because of this requirement. I'm not sure how impactful that is in terms of the network, but it's something that slightly concerns me.
I mean, you could still subscribe to all of the subnets that you want to subscribe to, but just not announce them, which I guess in the current design doesn't really do too much damage because we don't have peer sampling. I guess it would be a different story if we did, but yeah, I see what you mean.
So I guess the effect would be more for recovery on short forks when peers need to get samples via RPC. They would not ask you for them.
Oh, I see. Okay, right. Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, I guess, so if we didn't do that and we said you just immediately announce it, then can you end up just with people disconnected from you because they try to get this older data and you don't have it?
Yeah.
So in this case, if we choose not to wait for the backfill to announce a new custody subnet groups, we should definitely not downscore and ban a peer if the peer cannot send back the data columns.
But that would increase too much of spamming on the network, no? I think there's, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it may a little bit, but actually I think it depends of how many nodes are actually currently backfilling. I'm not sure. At the same time, there is a lot of nodes backfilling their blobs. So normally, this period of transition for one node should not be too long, and not too many nodes should be in this transition period at the same time.
Yeah, this issue happens today. You can have a peer which is very useful for you, has amazing bandwidth, great mesh score, but it doesn't have the backfill data yet. So you may choose to disconnect for it because you cannot backfill, but it's actually pretty useful peer for gossip. So at the end, we have to reconcile these multiple dimensions in one number. And at least Lighthouse would do that. If we checkpoint sync and we try to backfill and you don't have the data, we will disconnect it. But we could be disconnecting a very useful peer.
So ideally, I think there should be like two separate peer pools, one which has all the useful blocks, like can serve blocks by range and everything, and one who is the correct subset of columns for us, like whoever is the local peer who is trying to sync or whatever. And I think the scoring algorithm should uh, behave differently. Like, let's say a bad block by range shouldn't be downscored as much. Like, should like a bad column by range should not be downscored as bad as a bad block by range. I don't know if that makes sense. So, like, yeah, Nimbus is right now trying to think of an idea like this where we have two different peer pools. Because again, the one thing that you said, that if it doesn't have the right columns to serve columns by range, it's still a very useful peer.
How would it then work if you have two peer score lists, or how does that, how are you going to be maintaining that?
It should just like be two different peer pools, like
With different peer
the
scoring logic, or with the same?
so for bad columns and like let's say no columns, the scoring will be very different. The rate limiting criterias will be very different to like bad blobs or no blobs, or bad blocks or no blocks. So there will be a proper divide in both the peer pools. Because it's like if we ever have a unified peer pool where we think that, okay, this column doesn't, like this peer doesn't have the subset of columns that we need, um, it's of no use. No, that's not of no use. It's pretty useful to do everything else other than column syncing. So that's the basic motivation.
That makes sense. I guess we know more once it's live to see how stable that approach is. I don't think anyone else has tried doing that, right?
Not yet, but I have been discussing this with Manuel for some time. Yeah, like over the last 2 months or so. Yeah.
We have a kind of similar approach where we have preference for peers that have data that we're looking for and kind of give them a heavier weight. But it's not necessarily a gossip thing. It's how we do our peer management.
Okay, anything more on the topic?
The other idea that one can think of is, let's say you started on a PeerDAS DevNet on Genesis, and like it's been 8 to 10 days, and now you want to sync. One approach can be like you started syncing, you didn't do column syncing at all, you just synced blocks. You went till the tip, and while you're going till the tip, uh, as a background process or something, you are managing the peers who has like the correct subnets and everything. So in this, while you are like filtering out the peers, as you are syncing blocks, basically you have every correct peer who can serve you the right column. And like there are odds, like let's say the peer got disconnected or whatever, but there's still a very good decent probability that once you have those peers filtered in a separate pool as you are syncing blocks, once you start column syncing, it should be pretty fast regardless, even if there is sort of lesser supernodes. So that can be one approach of column syncing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess from my side, once we try it out, we'd learn more. I'm still a bit intrigued to see how that would play if you have non-finality and a few forks running around, because I guess in the happy case, either approach will probably work mostly fine, especially in a network with a lot of supernodes. The real challenge will be if you have multiple forks and you don't have many supernodes on your fork.
I think if you're syncing blocks first, even if you have multiple forks, while you're column syncing logic, you can just always compare the block header or whatever and just keep ingesting based on the correct block header in the correct slot. Like basically you basically sync blocks and you remember the map, which slot, what did you sync? And while you start column syncing, just apply that same map for the same slots for same columns. Like ask the columns only for those same slots. It shouldn't be like very
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah. Sense.
Yeah.
Any other topics that we want to discuss relate any other big changes? I guess the sort of main root problem we want to get at is are there any other big topics or big changes we need to do, similar to shifting computation to the transaction sender or figuring out multiple peer scoring peer pools or things like that that would prevent us from really sprinting on PeerDAS post Petra? Basically, if there's something we should be working on the specification side of things that could happen earlier rather than later.
I'm not aware of
Sounds like-
anything.
Okay, that's good. Then that sounds like it's mostly validator custody, distributed block building, and computation to transaction senders. Those would be the three big topics we would need to tackle over the next weeks, months. And then just stabilizing the network, right? Okay, sounds good. Agnish, yeah.
So there's one point that I see from the last week's doc. That is, if we were to like test get blobs in all the CLs, one thing we could do is we could either do delayed publishing of columns every slot, or we can publish less than 64 or like less than 50%. because like let's say if we publish less than 50%, then every CL would be enforced to check DA first, and then it would be like, okay, there is no DA, but that shouldn't be the case. They should reside on get blobs instead, to make the block available for attestation, if that makes sense. So that can be a test of a sort if anybody agrees.
Yeah, I agree. And even publishing less than 50% is quite interesting, because for sure, normally all supernode would consider the block as unavailable, because they will be totally not able to reconstruct the whole block. But some full nodes should consider still the block as available, because if in the, let's say, 49% of the column published, there are all the needed columns by a full node, so the full node will think this block is available, and then normally it should be reorged after, if for example, if the full node propose a block just on the slot after. So it can be a quite interesting test to run.
Yeah. What we can essentially do is, like, if we could somehow make the full nodes not subscribe to column topics at all, like for a while the publishing happens. Let's say we delay the entire process of subscription for, like, let's say 2 seconds into the slot. Then the full nodes would be very enforced to declare the block is available based on what it sees in engine get blobs, technically. But that would be a weird test to do, yes.
Maybe we can start with the withholding tests and then reconvene either in chat or in one of the breakout rooms to figure out how to continue that test stream. And it seems like the Lighthouse node adding the flag to artificially delay publishing blocks and columns should achieve that. Or would I be wrong there? Yeah. Line?
Yeah, I wanted to add that we are planning to add a few new flags for testing. So we want to add block publishing delay. So we temporarily withhold and then release. Then also data column publishing delay, and another one to advertise a false custody group count, such that today, if we use the withholding, the data is still available from RPC. So even if we don't have reconstruction, the peers can just query the original publisher and get the data. But if we publish from a node that's not a super node and it withholds the data is never made available, and such that the network can only progress if someone reconstructs.
Yeah, that sounds great. Once you have a branch, could you let me know and I can already deploy it and we can run a round of tests?
Yeah.
What would be the use case of delaying block publishing? Like, I understand the use case of delaying column publishing, but not block publishing exactly.
I guess more network chaos.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, we essentially need to make sure that we can recover from all sorts of weird edge cases, right? Yeah, and also people can be malicious validators if they want to be. Okay, cool. I think that we have enough clarity on DevNet 4. I'll write down a few of the test scenarios that we agreed on doing. I've shared the link to the DevNet 5 specs. Are we in agreement that we want to wait for DevNet 5? As in, we make sure everyone has validator custody. We do the distributed block building stuff. We engage with ELs and so on before we do DevNet 5. And until then, we just continue on DevNet 4 / whatever variation of it looks like. Okay. Then I guess we just need some information. And I guess once people start working on some of these topics, we'll know how far out they are and if it's worth waiting for them or not. Cool. And the third topic was that there's no other big open research topics we need to talk about, so we should be good on the shipping front for PeerDAS. Great. Anything else people want to discuss today?
Yeah, I want to give a heads up to all the implementer teams that, at least from our end, validator custody is really complex and potentially the most complex part of the design. So you guys should start looking into that as soon as possible. It's
Which
just an
clients already have
engineering.
it, by the way?
I mean, it's just from an engineering point of view. It's just complicated.
I totally agree with Lion. The spec is simple, but implementing it, it's not so simple at all.
Which clients have validator custody implemented already?
Probably none.
Okay.
To be fair, it's a very recent spec change.
Yeah, I mean, we've just started looking into it as well, and yes, it's complicated because the beacon node and all the DAS core things are like on one side, and then bringing the data back from validators, that's another. Like it just doesn't adhere to most of the design, system design in general.
Yeah, and being pragmatic, I see the point of being feature complete as soon as possible, but this is not in the path of stability. And even if one client doesn't implement validator custody, we can still go ahead and fork on mainnet. To say if 70% of the nodes do have validator custody, that will be probably enough super nodes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess this is also something that we can deploy already on any DevNet we have live, and we don't need to wait until the next one.
So yeah, if you, Manu, or anyone looking into this, if you have a design that you are happy with, could you share it on the Discord? Because I'm keen to see how do you deal with the complexity.
Yeah. I don't have any document, but definitely I will write one. And yeah, also I I will be happy to see on your side how you deal with it.
Yeah, we don't have a design yet that we're happy with.
Okay, sounds good to me. Anything else we want to discuss today? I see there was a lot of chat with between the Daplan and Francesco. I don't know if you guys think it's worth surfacing that. I'd leave that up to you. Okay. I'll take that as a no. Anything else? Yeah, Katya, go for it.
Yeah, so I guess the computation metric should be deprecated, right? If we move everything to EL.
Why would they need to be deprecated right now?
Maybe not right now, maybe later. But just want to draw your attention that if you move to computation to EL, because we have a computation metric right now, is this part moving to EL? Or only?
That's at least 4 months-ish from now, at least. Like in the least estimate.
Okay. And I guess there will be new metrics for validator custody later. That's it.
Yeah, I think once client teams have started implementation, they'll have a better idea of what might be good to have as a metric and whatnot.
That would be great to share some ideas in the chat later, if someone has any. Because it will speed up the process of metrics synchronization.
Yeah, I think whoever's first with their design, maybe post a list of things you would like to have as a metric so that we can just align on that and we don't already have people implementing different things.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, anything else people want to talk about today? And thanks everyone for joining. Have a nice day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Now
Bye.
those